what I'm going to do is try and explore a little bit about what might be at the root of allergic responses. And I think one of the things that I feel quite strongly as a naturopathic practitioner is that, that's not going to be the same for everybody. And so really, we need to look at everybody's personal condition, but what I'd like to do, or personal situation, and some of the other talks I've done, I've talked about terrain and how we affect that. And I've also focused on digestion, and we've done some presentation from my kitchen. So all of those feed into this, but I'd like to explore some of the things that we can look at when we're talking about allergies and asthma. So without further ado, let me show you some of the slides that I would like to talk about. Unfortunately, I can't show you my slides, so I'm just wondering, Aisha, if there is that special button that you can press that will allow me to do that. I think with the new Zoom setup, there is a default setting that means you can't show your slides, so it has to be overridden. But hopefully Aisha will be able to do that. In the meantime, we've got somebody on the call here who's I'm seeing on my screen is Mark. And I just wondered, Mark, could you unmute yourself for a minute and maybe I could just sort of have a quick chat with you? Would that be possible?
Sure.
Do you experience, do you have a personal experience with allergies or hay fever?
Not strongly. My orientation was your addition of the third category of detox. And I know you have, experience in that area. So, but I certainly know people that, particularly in London, with the, I think my understanding is a lot of the trees, because they've been transplanted, have perhaps a female orientation. So there's a lack of a balance between trees with pollen and hay fever of male and female trees. I don't know if you have any familiarity with that, but I just have talked with people that have a real problem with London in particular.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that, Mark. I have heard of, I haven't heard of that specific theory before, but there are definite geographical variations. I've heard of people who believe they have a gluten allergy, and they go to a different place and eat, wheat with it, and they don't have any problem at all. And quite often it can be linked to genetic modification or alteration of crops or storage methods. So that's one of the themes that I would like to focus on a little bit, Mark, and thanks for bringing up the detoxification point. Okay, let's have another go at screen sharing, and yes, I can this time. So thank you, Aisha, thank you, 58. So I just need to find the slide that we're looking for. Sorry, there's just a moment. Here we go. Okay. So, on this theme of allergies and sensitivities, we've had a couple of clients when I've been working with Aisha, where we've seen this pattern coming through quite strongly, that people have extremely strong allergic reactions to things that really sometimes are inexplicable. And also, obviously, this is the season for hay fever, and I've noticed the odd sort of bit of pollen getting in my eye and irritating me. So we're going to start by looking at some of the symptoms, then we're going to look at an alternative route to understanding that. And for you, Mark, I want to focus on detoxification as well, because I believe that really lies at the heart of the matter, that hay fever comes out of congestion of our filter organs, of our body's ability to detoxify. So what are some of the irritating symptoms that we get? Might be itchy eyes, might be sniffling when we're in, where better a place to be than go and get our shot of vitamin D than in a nice sunny field. And if we're experiencing congestion and irritation like that, that's uncomfortable and annoying. So, and the other way that these symptoms can manifest is in asthma. And here we can see this is a way of dealing with asthma, which is to use a steroid-based medication. Now that will give relief, and obviously if you feel like you can't catch your breath, and if something will allow you to breathe, then that's pretty essential and probably a good idea. But steroids do have side effects. They are pro-inflammatory, they're acidifying to the body. So it's not an ideal solution, something which takes us more back to the root causality of why it may be that we're experiencing congestion, unexpected or hypersensitive inflammation, would be a preferable model to using something that gets rid of the symptomology. So the way that steroids work is they put our body into a similar metabolic response to flight or fright, and in that state we get relaxation of the muscles from steroid medication. So not a great place to be. So when we start to look at what might be where the cause of inflammation, allergic response may come from, actually, I've just been reading this afternoon about some really interesting research showing that the root of that can come back to our breastfeeding days and what our mothers were eating when we were in gestation and then when we were fed by our mothers. And there's one really, really interesting chemical that's coming into research, which is based around xenoestrogen exposure, which is an increased plastic exposure, and also it's used in industrial agricultural. Sorry, the words are slipping away from me, but they're coming back. In industrial agricultural processes, that these plastic-like elements are infusing the animal proteins that we eat. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but I just want to say that, you know, if somebody is more sensitive to these things, it is quite possible that the scene was set way back down the track. It's not necessarily something that's in the house today. Okay, so if somebody experiences these things, there are all kinds of markers that we can look at that might help us to assess what that process is. And this is the 81 marker test that we do with PAR. And what I want to say is, in looking at this, everybody is an individual. So you can look at that and there may be some inflammatory markers, but really we're looking at the patient, not the disease. And that is the principle of naturopathy, that really we're assessing what that individual person is experiencing. And that's what this allows us to do. Is their liver functioning optimally? Are their kidneys functioning optimally? Are they vitamin D deficient? Because all of these things, do they have a high acidic load? Because all of these things may be at the heart and the reason of why somebody is suffering from an allergic response. Okay, so I'm not a number, I'm a free man. This is at the heart of naturopathic approaches, that we consider the person, not the disease. Okay, so in assessing that, I find, because it's a clinical tool that I use, live and dry blood analysis to be particularly helpful. And you can see here that the dry blood part of the assessment, I drop a slide down 8 times on a drop of blood on the tip of the finger, capillary blood from the tip of the finger. Obviously, I'm not doing that at the moment. Then we get a dry blood sample, and we'd like it to look like the picture on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, it's very rare that I see that, but we would like the whole of the dry blood sample to look like this, bright pink in color with a fibrin mesh running through it. Now, when we examine those dried blood slides, what we do is the first drops that I dropped the slide down on are the biggest drops on the slide. So if we go back here, we see these are the first drops on the slide. And then within each of those layers, we superimpose a person. So anything that is going on in the center of this dried blood drop is going on in the center of the body. And here we see a classic allergy pattern. So as we can see, the reason for the allergy is coming from congestion in the center of the body. And there are these little white pools, which we call polymerized protein puddles. So that is a classic allergy profile within the premise of the, there was a slight distraction, and I'm now back with you. So that is the pattern that we see, and that suggests to us that there may be allergies present. Now, one of the other things that we can see in the dried blood, and you can see here, this is a different dried blood sample, that in the center of the ring, there is bowel toxicity, and to the outside edge of the ring, there is heavy metal toxicity, and that's quite a strong heavy metal toxicity pattern. Now, we can verify that with other forms of assessment. We can test hair, and certainly if we do a stool sample, then we can see if there is an imbalance in somebody's intestinal bacteria. And these will all be likely to be related to a picture of overall toxicity, which is what I would suggest: increased congestion, overall toxicity. Certainly, you know, when somebody's had antibiotics, that can be very drying to the body. These are potential pictures associated with an increased predisposition towards allergies, sensitivities, hay fever, and the like. Okay, so when we're looking to help somebody reverse their predisposition to allergic reactions, we look at all the factors we can. We listen to their personal story. Have they been taking a lot of medication? And fundamentally, speaking as a nutritionist, we look at what they're currently eating, because what we want to do is have a dietary balance that supports and promotes detoxification and increased alkalinity of the body tissue. And as somebody I was listening to was saying recently, and I said it myself in the last lecture that I did, what is our biggest exposure to the outside world, to the world of toxicity, of chemicals, of industrial pollution, or nature's bounty and harvest? It's when we chew food, put it in our mouth, and it comes into our digestive tract. And at that point, we have a massive exposure to the outside world. So we want that food to be chewed, and we want it to be fundamentally promoting alkalinity. So a plant-based diet has a massive role in supporting detoxification and making our body tissue more alkaline. And when we look at those number-based tests, one of the, let me come on to the next slide here. I'll come back to the fish in 1 minute. This metabolic model is the one that I was taught about detoxification, that I think explains things very, very clearly. So what we want to achieve is alkalinity. And the way that we achieve that is with food that is high in biophotons, that creates an increased negative charge in our body. And what we don't want is food that is dead, that has no life force, that is high in positive charge, high in protons, which tends to increase toxicity, increase free radical damage, taking us over to the left-hand side of the picture. But we are making elements that are high in positive charge, that are acidic all the time that we exist. Our body makes acids. So we have special ways of getting those out of our body. And this is how our body detoxifies, through urination, defecation, respiration, and perspiration. So our filter organs filter our body to get rid of toxicity, congestion, acidity, and we need that once they've done their job, things need to be able to get out. So we need to keep ourselves hydrated to promote urination. We need to be eating fiber-rich foods to make sure that we defecate regularly. We need to breathe, and yoga can be very helpful for that. And we need to perspire, because our skin is our third kidney. And so if we block our third kidney with cosmetic preparations, or that may actually increase further acidity and toxicity into our body, then that's one vital way that our bodies can't detoxify, and that can be part of the picture around increased sensitivity, allergies, etc. So if we go, I'm just going to go back to the previous slide for 1 minute, and that the reason I put the fish there is just because when I looked at this research earlier today, xenoestrogens are cited as one of the primary causative factors of allergies and sensitivities. And guess what? Plastic wrapping is rich in xenoestrogens. So if you're buying your fish wrapped in plastic, which most of it is, even if by the time it's on the supermarket shelf, it's come out of there, but most of it's there, then that increases your xenoestrogen exposure. And the same is true of cheese, the same is true of pork chops, the same. And unfortunately, that's in the nature of animal food in the 21st century, that because of 7 billion of us being on the planet, a lot of it is exposed to industrial agricultural processes, which increase these toxic elements. And then the packaging adds an extra layer to that, if you'll pardon the pun. So coming back to detoxification, my one-stop solution for all health situations, the plant-based diet. And there's so much evidence to support the benefits. You know, there are research papers showing that people who eat a plant-focused diet, whether that's fully vegan, whether that's slightly vegetarian, experience less hay fever, allergies, asthma. The papers are there. You know, it's meta-analysis. It's not individual, you know, sort of small group research papers. That they're strong research papers showing the benefits of this. So organic food, we don't want to be introducing pesticides into our body, because that is increasing the load on our filter organs. And we can make plant food delicious. And you can see there, these are big raw salads. One of the things that people are going to be saying, well, what about that plant-based diet? What am I going to be lean, fit, strong, and healthy? Well, if you've got any doubt about that, watch the Game Changers, because it's loaded with science about how on a plant-based diet, you can be fit and strong as anybody. And then I just want to introduce this other element to the detoxification debate, which is the importance of having raw food. It's a message I've stated before, but we're not talking about cold food here. We're talking about raw food. And it is an important part, I would suggest, of this digestive healing that is needed to support detoxification, to introduce some raw foods into our diet, because cooked foods actually create a white blood cell response from our body, as was shown by the famous Swiss naturopath, Dr. Bircher Benner. So if eating all those salads doesn't appeal to you, what's a great way to get more fresh raw plant food into your diet and promote detoxification? Green juices, green smoothies, and you know, trying to have those as regular as possible. But vegetable juices are a great way to get plant food in directly into your bloodstream, or just blend them up so that you're getting huge servings of fresh plant food that should help you to feel satiated. My favorite, sprouted beans and seeds. And if you're trying to support your kidneys, which are a fundamental organ of detoxification, mung bean sprouts are really good for supporting kidney function. Animal protein presents a challenge for your kidneys in terms of trying to achieve alkalinity. Selective detoxification through short periods of fasting can also help the detoxification process. And I would say also that, you know, focusing on fruits, rather than having lots of grains, because grains can be slightly acidifying. I definitely would encourage you to have whole grains in your diet, but if you find yourself eating lots of pasta and bread just to feel full, then try replacing that with some fruit, because that should help your body detoxify. Okay, now, miracle cure. I was only talking about this last week, but in my research on allergies, I've suddenly stumbled across this bit of research showing that nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon of nutritional yeast a day, dramatically helps people reduce allergy and hay fever suffering. So I've only just started introducing this into my diet, but there is some robust research showing that this 5 pence or 5 cents addition to your diet can help you. So it's got a cheesy, nutty taste. It's a great way of adding flavor to plant-based dishes, and it's rich in this nutritional element, beta-glucans, which is considered to be the helpful agent in helping people reduce allergic responses. So we've talked a little bit about cosmetics. That's a two-way thing from my point of view. If it's a highly chemical, non-natural product, makeup or lipstick or nail varnish that you're applying to your body, then that can potentially trap things in and stop this vital part of your detoxification. And then in addition to that, you're putting toxic chemicals onto your skin. You know, they're not strongly toxic, but they're not going to help your body detoxify. The other thing that is really important in this picture, in my opinion, is the clothes that you wear. So this book by Brian Clement and Anne-Marie Clement talks about some of the damaging effects of the clothing that we wear in terms of stopping our body from detoxifying. So I would recommend reading this book, but what the image that comes into my head quite often when I think about this is somebody trying to make themselves healthy, being indoors on an exercise on a running road, on an exercise track, wearing a polyester tracksuit, and really, to an extent, what you're doing, particularly if that's tight fabric, but regardless of that anyway, is that if you're wearing plastic-based clothing, you're wearing plastic, and that's stopping your body from detoxifying. So I do think that's an important part of the picture, the clothes that you wear. They want to be ideally cotton-based, or ideally organic cotton. That book talks an awful lot about wired bras, actually, and how deleterious to lymphatic flow they can be. But essentially natural fabrics. And they also talk about dry cleaning products being deleterious to our health. Another one of my favorite topics, electromagnetic field exposure. And it's something I've always talked about a lot, but I'm feeling a little bit of sort of reinforcement in this area because I listened to a full-blown medical doctor who has started an organization called PHIRE, P-H-I-R-E. Her name will come back to me in a moment, but she was she has a wodge of robust research showing the deleterious effects of electromagnetic fields on our body. And it's pervasive, and what she's suggesting is that what it does is it increases oxidative stress, and oxidative stress is a huge part of the picture around allergies, sensitivities, hay fever, and asthma, I would say. So it's multifactorial. There's a lot of elements to the picture, but certainly I would be limiting cell phone use, putting your cell phone on airplane mode whenever you can, trying to use cabled computers rather than Wi-Fi. I have a new sheet that I've just created on the subject that I can email to you if that's of interest to you. And one of the best ways of detoxifying our body is to decharge it, because when we touch the screens of smartphones and iPads, then we actually charge our body up, and this is a great way to decharge it. So that is it. I have talked a bit, and I would be very interested, Mark, if you have any questions. You'll need to unmute yourself. Here we go.
One, on your last point there about EMF, please do email across that sheet. Be interested. Gareth, I think it was very comprehensive, the link between food and filter organs, which is a new term for me, to put them in a broad category of all the different ones. So I think I'm just quote digesting your information. So this is great.
Super.
There's one question from me. Is there anything that's new and we haven't, heard on the new EMF guidelines that, you're going to share? I'm just curious.
In fact, I was quite pleased that a lot of the things that she said in the lecture were things that I was already recommending, and it encouraged me, having listened to her saying that, to create this sheet. And there's a link at the bottom of it, which actually has a Silicon Valley engineer doing a TED talk, where he, says, did you realize that on the cell phone instructions, it says, do not hold a cell phone closer than 1 inch to your body? It's actually recommended that you don't hold it closer than 1 inch to your body. So, I mean, in those instructions, there are just guidelines for how. I mean, this computer that I'm talking on now is not running on Wi-Fi. It is cabled, and there are instructions in that as to how you can reduce your exposure. But what she talks about in the lecture, which you can get a recording of from the Nutrition Collective, is I'm just casting my mind back to that lecture. Just an awful lot of information about the effects of radiation on our body from all the electronic devices, kind of cordless telephones, baby monitors, Wi-Fi, all the things that are part of everyday modern life, and the disruptive effect they have. And she heavily focuses on calcium ion channels in cell membranes being disrupted, and calcium flowing out of the cells into the body tissue, causing free radical damage. And she talks about asymptomatic people and people who seem to be more sensitive to it. She focuses very heavily on that, but she also talks about the importance of antioxidant foods, which the plant-based diet, which is recently harvested, is organic, is loaded with antioxidants. Well, will give you more antioxidants. So I think that's as sort of quick a summary as I can do, but I can certainly get more of that information.
Okay, sounds good. Mark, do you have any other question? I have one more while you're thinking. Well, the question I have is, a lot of clients that come to us are complaining of, low energy. And I wanted to hear your views on the link between low energy and the toxins accumulated in the body.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, one of the things that when we see low energy is, again, I'm not a number, I'm a free man. It depends very much on the client. But if you've got low energy, then it's probably because you're acidic. And one of the lectures that I went to 2 years ago was talking about how you need to promote alkalinity in order to facilitate detoxification. So if you have a raised anion gap, then your body is going to be less capable of detoxifying. And so, you know, when we look at one of those dried blood pictures that I showed had those black bands of heavy metal toxicity in them. You know, if you're eating a diet that is high in acidifying foods, whether that be, you know, sweetened cola drinks or you know, non-grass-fed beef or poultry that, you know, has been injected with toxic matter, or, you know, whatever the story, or farmed fish, then your body is going to be less capable of detoxifying the stuff. You know, we're all exposed to heavy metal. Well, those of us who live in the city are exposed to heavy metal toxicity quite a lot. And then one thing that I didn't really touch on when I was talking is, so the dietary elements will help our body detoxify and, you know, help our kidneys work. You know, if there's heavy metals stored there, the diet is going to be the platform way to start that moving forwards. And then, you know, vegetable juices and then periods of fasting. But also that there is the reconnection of mind, body and spirit that I've talked about before, that in Chinese medicine, they look at our organs actually being associated with emotions. So, you know, if our kidneys are, you know, functioning suboptimally, one might want to look at the connection with fear and anxiety. And if our livers are functioning suboptimally, we might want to look at the connection with anger. So I think that in order for those organs of our body, which are filtering our blood, our spleen, our liver, our kidneys, to work effectively, yes, the nutritional, yes, the lifestyle, but also maybe just an element, and this is what a naturopathic practitioner will do, is to listen to the patient and sort of just get a sense of, you know, what the history is there, what's going on in their lives at the moment that might be stopping them from achieving the optimum health that they're seeking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Gareth, just a brief one. I think you've made a distinction between juicers and blenders, and that we can tend to not need the fiber that kind of stays with kind of blending process. But do you have a perspective on that? Excuse me, I asked that only because I have a blender that I've used on and off, but I'm considering a juicer.
Yeah. So I've sort of gone both ways on blending and juicing. I mean, I have been an absolutely dedicated juicer. And I do believe, you know, if one was to visit somewhere like the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida, where it's all plant-based eating, they juice everything because they believe that if somebody's digestion is compromised, that they simply will not absorb the nutrients from any form of food, and they feel that blending it just oxidizes it, you know. And then I've read some really interesting stuff on Michael Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org, about how if you don't have the fiber, so if you strip the fiber away, then you can, his suggestion is, adversely affect the bacteriological balance in your gut because the fiber isn't there, and some of the beneficial bacteria that you need in order to absorb, digest, metabolize your food in your gut aren't fed and therefore don't proliferate. So I think where I'm on with that at the moment, I mean, in preparing for this lecture, you know, as you're getting ready to speak publicly, your adrenal levels go up and your blood, you know, flows away from your intestines, and you're not really in a great place for digesting, you know, large amounts of food. So we just sat in the garden and had a celery juice, and that just goes straight in. You know, there's no need for complex digestive processes. There's no need for blood to be drawn to your intestines in order to facilitate the energy dependent digestive absorption processes. It's just straight in. And that's why I think it's used in detoxification. We went and did a 3-day juice cleanse in Malta once. Sylvie's my wife's least favorite holiday. No, but it was, if detoxification is your primary goal, then I do think juices have a place. They give your digestive system a rest, and you're getting lots of vegetable matter into your body. There are some amazing healing stories around juicing. But do make sure you get a good one. This is going to sound like a personal plug, but if you go to my website, which is shown here on the landing page on the screen, if you go to my website, there are 2 sheets that clearly explain what a good juicer is, because you want something that really masticates the stuff. You don't want a 45-pound one, spinning one. And then you can really get good quantities of juice from kale and wheatgrass. So I think the short answer to your question is that they both have a place. And I certainly wouldn't be without my juicer, but we've started blending more now.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Michal. I do have a question. I always have that belief in me, maybe because I never really had allergies, that you can grow out of them. And when my son had allergies, I kind of like managed to walk around it, and he is much, much better as he grows. Is that just because I believe in it, or is it an option?
I'd say it absolutely is an option. I mean, that's why I thank you so much for saying that. And I mean, this is really what this talk is here to say, that you're not, it's not just like, I'm working with somebody at the moment, and I have to keep saying to him, it's not the case that God has just pointed a finger at you and said, unlucky you, this is the way it's going to be. That's one of the basis of naturopathic healing, that we believe everything can change. I think sometimes people do grow out of things, that the body almost just covers things up. But I would say your son's being fed a highly nutritious diet, and maybe some of the things that were metabolically there are being healed. I think, Michaela, that kind of cuts 2 ways. It can be that the body just covers things up, or it can be that they genuinely heal. I've noticed itchy skin coming back over the last, year or so. As a baby, I had the most itchy skin. I remember my mum putting me in a bed and covering me in chamomile lotion to stop my skin itching. And I just wonder if that's stuff being uncovered and coming back, and then I aim to support that with all the things I've been talking about. But I absolutely do think that children can be supported to stop having allergies and sensitivities. I think that answers your question, I hope.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess not. So, well, thank you very much, Gareth. I thought that was a very interesting talk, and very useful as always. So, very, very much appreciated at a professional and a personal level, from someone suffering from hay allergies as well. So, with that, I think we're going to close the webinar, and thank you everybody for attending and for your questions as well.
Thanks very much, and thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Michal, and Michelle, who does a lot of the admin. Thank you for being here, Mark, and do please contact me if you through PAR London or Food for Life if you have any further questions.
Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Aisha, very much.
Bye.